G'day everyone, I'm Jimmy Rayner and this is the Thinkmental podcast. G'day everyone, thank you for joining me for episode 15 of Thinkmental, the podcast that simplifies mental health and encourages conversation. For anyone that's new to the podcast, Thinkmental is a platform where we aim to discuss all things mental health and provide young people with strategies on how to better understand their feelings and emotions. Mental health disorders do not discriminate, and here at Thinkmental, we want to simplify the ways in which we tackle them. Thank you so much for choosing to check out the podcast once again. Now, this week we have a pretty big deal on our show. Our guest was a former head tutor at the University of Sunshine Coast in the sports science faculty, a keynote speaker for schools and companies. But more importantly, at the moment, he's a 26-year-old mental performance coach, reconditioning subconscious minds and sharing how on all his social media platforms and websites. Now, if that's not enough to get you pumped, he's also a facilitator for Sunday stillness sessions for the Cool to Be Conscious group, a powerful yet simple mindfulness flow where he guides you through connection exercises, breath work, and meditation, leaving you feeling clear-headed, energized, and connected. Todd Jarratt, love to have you on today, mate. How you going?
Oh, there
you
we go. Okay, I love it, Jimmy. You killed it. Love it.
A little quick edit at the start before our show, and we're good to go.
Yeah, you've done well. You've got it to a T, brother.
Yes. We have to keep the main things in there. I had to, as we said before, I had to change your 23-year-old status to 26.
It's what happens when we haven't been on LinkedIn for a little while.
Yeah. I'm too business minded. I love LinkedIn. I'm a bit of a nerd for it, but yeah, thanks for coming on, Matt. I'm absolutely pumped.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. When you reached out and I saw the name of the podcast and everything you stand for and the pillars and everything, it was just a perfect alignment. I think mental health, especially in the world at the moment, is so crucial. And anything I can do to help or to share, to give that golden nugget to someone that listens to this podcast and this particular episode, I'm pumped on. So yeah. I'm ready to shoot some fire.
Yeah, let's go. So for everyone who is listening that hasn't been across you before, there's some people that have started listening to Thinkmental from yourself, being connected through that community, and a few people that we know each other of, like Trav Cochran, shout out to Technician. But give us a bit of an overview of the people that don't know who you are and what your story, where you're from and things like that, just to give a brief overview.
Yeah, so I'm originally from outback New South Wales, a little town called Hay, second flattest place on earth. And there was a period there where it actually had I believe the highest suicide rate per capita in Australia. So it was pretty rough there. That was back during the drought. The short version of the long, really, for my upbringing was I was pretty different. I had a lot of bullying that went on that led to some pretty big subconscious shifts in myself, and my personal development journey sort of officially started when I was 16, but I had sort of like some subconscious stories going on in my head that were around success and being different and doing the work from the age of like 11. So from an early age, I was really fortunate to do some epic things: sports commentary and team management, sports journalism while teaching at uni and coaching athletes down in Vic. And I guess where it really leads us to today is at one point I really wanted to go to Stanford University to intern in their program, work with their NFL athletes and their Olympic sport program. And for me to do so, I was coming straight out of my uni degree in exercise and sports science. And I was enrolled in a master's of exercise physiology, but I knew I wanted my plan A, and that was to go to Stanford. So I actually came up to the Sunshine Coast to intern with a coach up here to get a letter of recommendation. And once I came up, they were like, wow, you're a young guy and you know what you're doing. Like, do you want to job up here? Do you want to train your athletes? Do you want to come and teach at the university and teach the personal training courses? And I was like, absolutely. That just the opportunities at my age. I was only, fresh turned 21 at that point and was coming straight out of my degree, but was fortunate to have some experience under the belt. And that led me really to the sunny coast and where I've been. But I guess where I'm at now with subconscious coaching is I had an experience with one of my pro athletes in maybe 2017, in that he was arguably the fittest athlete I'd ever worked with, and had the best numbers and markers we could see that we'd been through and tested, but he wasn't winning. And he was, a third to fifth place guy. And I had an experience where he actually won a state title, and he almost didn't believe it. And at the time, I wasn't aware of what was going on. But what I realized was that he had a conscious goal of becoming a champion, but a subconscious pattern and story that said, you don't belong there. You're a third to fifth place guy. And so when he won the title, it was by default, with other riders getting injured and their bikes blowing up in the final race. He was in a state of disbelief. And that was what really triggered me to go, I can do all of the physical training in the world with these guys. We can have their nutrition on point. They're sleeping like as they should. They're nailing all of these things. They're seeing all of the physios. They're doing all of the recovery modalities. But there's something underneath. If that box isn't checked, we're not going to win championships. And that's really when my mindset, you'd say coaching path started. I was still there, coach, performance coach, strength and conditioning coach. But I really started to put more of an emphasis in my research and my understanding into mindset specifically. And over time, it's developed, I guess, through my own personal experiences as well, to the point now where I'm, I guess, what I would say is a subconscious specialist. What I do and the way I get the results with those that I'm working with is through understanding patterns, analyzing patterns, and seeing what things don't quite fit. And from there, I can work out what subconscious patterns, programs, and stories aren't actually aligning with their conscious goals, beliefs, or desires. And it's been an incredible journey to get to here with the guys I'm so fortunate to work with. But a lot of it links in, with, we're speaking about, high level pro athletes. And then in the other side of it, really the other end of the spectrum, where I'm working with those that are in desperate need of support in terms of, mental health challenges, without getting directly into the specifics, thinking, suicide and depression and PTSD and things of that nature, that I started to realize that, performance and mental health really can be treated the same way. And that's sort of led us to where we are today. So yeah, that's a bit about the backstory. If there's any particular questions, let me know, but that's a shortened version. I know one thing I'd said to everyone listening to Jimmy was, I was like, if we're chatting about my backstory, I want it to be 10 to 15 minutes long, not like an hour. So
yeah. And if you want the full story, go check out The Technician. It's the craziest story. And just for context, if you can, it doesn't have to go for long, but just a very shortcut version of because you talked about the mind side and whatnot, but for yourself specifically, I know that you use a lot of this for yourself when you're going through your own physical pain and physical issues. Just give the audience a bit of an overview, if you can, of the hardship that you went through yourself.
Yeah. So when I was in year 3, I was labeled as gifted in the education system. And so I was skipped up a year, so put into the year above. So I went from year 3 to 5. And basically what happened was I was alienated. I didn't fit in with my old year group, and I didn't fit in with the new year group. And I was bullied to the point where at 10 years old, I was crying at home every morning, telling mum I didn't want to go to school and I'd rather be dead. So I was having, suicidal thoughts and words being verbalized. And the only way really to get through that by the end of the year was, in the short form, was I chose to go back to my previous year group. So repeat. And, information, knowledge-wise, I was, well enough to continue in the year I was in, if not go ahead further. But the amount of emotional trauma I went through, I couldn't tolerate it. So I went back thinking that would fix the problem, because I'd been alienated. And I thought, if I go back to my crew, my tribe, I'll be sorted. And what actually happened was it worsened the situation, because now I'd gone from the kid that didn't really belong in the year above or the year below to now being considered like, were you smart and now you're dumb? What's wrong with you? And it didn't fix it. Actually got worse. Then I was bullied from both ends. And what that actually did in my head was, it started, we do this. This is our ego. This is how our mind works. It will work out ways to protect us from pain. That's, avoid pain and move toward pleasure. And so for me, I was going through so much emotional trauma and pain from this bullying that I guess my ego, my mind, my protective self was like, well, if I can't fit in for being different going ahead, and I can't fit in by being different or from being different, going back down. If I can't get away from being bullied for being different, then God damn it, I'm going to give you a reason to bully me. Like, I am going to be so different. I'm going to try so hard, and I'm going to oppose everything you say, which is kind of like, like the fight back mentality. If you're going to push me, I'm going to push you back harder. So it developed into this mentality of different became my protection. It became my shield. And then as I got into high school and around year 9, I was at boarding school. And, at boarding school, when they're living there Monday to Friday, you can't escape the bullies. You're living with them. So when the bell goes in the afternoon, it gets worse. So that was pretty full on. And going into year 9, I started looking at, I guess, successful business owners and successful athletes, and those that were like the best in the world. And I guess at year 9, 14, and turning 15, I had this sort of click that my story went from to be different is to be a protection. It was to be different is to be successful, because the number one people in the world are different. They're the 1% for a reason. So then my story continued with being different, but it was about different equates to success. So then it just like furthered ingrained this story and made it stronger with more intensity. And basically from then on, I was just like a determined, obsessive young man, I was just hitting puberty then. And that's when I say like the personal development journey really kind of started. So it was really the bullying that I went through that actually got me on the PD journey and learning more about, the best in the world and whatnot. And really what ended up happening over the years as an accumulation of what we call like allostatic load, which is basically just when we're constantly working too hard and we don't have rest periods, was I worked myself into the ground when my body shut down on me a few times and was in and out of hospital for 3 or 4 years, trying to, manage and grow a business while teaching at uni, while training athletes and consulting. And I got to the point where in the last sort of 2 years, I had 2 near-death experiences. And with that came an understanding, because I'd been the science guy, studied science, went to uni to do the science, taught the science at uni, to then having these experiences of, near death and you could say the spiritual or the energetic side of things coming through. I was like, wow, okay, there's a lot more to this. And that's when I couldn't deny the other side. So where I'm really at now is understanding there's 2 parts to this picture. And that's really been the most transformative shift in my life, because it's enabled me, the work that I'm doing with the pro athletes that's getting the massive results and those that I'm fortunate to work with is about combining the 2, the science and the spirit, if you were to term it like that, or the tangible and the intangible. So, and a lot of that comes down to rewiring and reprogramming, so to speak, reconditioning the subconscious, because it is our driving factor. It's what determines almost everything we do. So, my story really was from a rough place, I made something powerful, and then from an even rougher place with the near-death experiences, something more powerful. So I'm a big believer in the darker the darkness, the brighter it becomes afterwards. So,
and we briefly mentioned, in our initial chat, just to our catch up about Bob Proctor's concept of if it's this good, if it's this bad, it must eventually be fucking good.
Yes,
I butchered that big time, but the concept is sort of there.
You did it pretty well. The only thing is he didn't say fuck it. If it's this bad, it must be good, which aligns with the law of polarity. The more negative, the more positive charge there is, the more masculine, the more feminine, in that kind of energetic way. But the more black, the more white, the gray is in between. And so when something is really bad, usually there needs to be a reciprocation on the opposite pole for the principle of balance. And absolutely, that's why I guess now, it's been a journey the last 2 or 3 years. For those 2 years, I was in and out of hospital so much with, week to 2 week long stays at a time and all different kinds of medications and the surgeons and everything telling me that I couldn't be healed and I wouldn't be able to get better and all of these issues. And through that, if anything, it's made me stronger, because I now see the resilience in it, that now I know when I'm kind of going into a challenging time or position or state, I'm like, okay, it almost brings up positivity because I'm getting excited about what's to come. So It's definitely resilience has been a huge thing through all of that. But in saying that, also learning balance, because I never knew balance before for my whole life. I know mum will listen to this. She's like a number one fan. All these years, because I was so stubborn and so, obsessed in achieving my goals and achieving my outcomes and doing the work and being on the grind and the hustle. I never saw my family. I didn't have friends. It was just one-minded. She'd always say to me whenever she could catch the opportunity, Todd, it's about balance. And my answer to her back then, I'm not kidding, was bullshit. Balance is mediocrity. Because the way I thought of it back then was, when you're completely focused on one way, think of for the audio, you're thinking of a seesaw. And if you put all of your focus and energy into one, you get all of the weight on one side, you get progress because all of the energy shifts to the weighted side. To me, balance was like having nothing on either side. It was just empty. So there's no real purpose, no real vision, no real mission. And that was literally probably from the age of 12 to, maybe 23, when things were really, really rough health-wise. And we had those constant hospital visits and the family were questioning whether I was going to make it through. I realized that balance didn't need to be nothing. It means you can work hard, but then you rest hard. Or you work smart, you rest smart. And so it was this kind of, it took me 10, 12 years to realize it, but balance is huge. And I know that that's a big thing in the personal development space, because so many people listen to, whether it be Gary Vee or Grant Cardone or guys like that are motivational, Eric Thomas, Les Brown, where it's about do the work, hustle, grind. But one thing that is a massive passion for me now is speaking to young driven people, young entrepreneurs, to know that if you work in that way without having the balance, there will come a time where, the seesaw will go the opposite, it will kind of return, because that's the same thing. On this note, our emotions are solely based on how rational or irrational we are being. So if I give this is a massive piece of value that I learned probably 6 months ago, and it's that rational behavior is when we have a balance between positive and negative, when we're like objective in the center. And that's when we can see a situation happen and we can respond by observing first and then making an informed decision, rather than egoically kind of react. Whereas irrationality is when we have either too much positive or too much negative. So what happens is, again, with this kind of the balance side of it, think about people that are hyper positive and they don't actually want to look at the negatives. They disregard it, they refute it, they ignore it. Even though there are negative things going on, they don't want to view it. So they only focus on the positive. Eventually, because of the balance, that negative has to come back. But what it does is you don't usually have control of it. It kind of flings you back. And that was me. I worked so hard one way and was so positive one way. I was in denial about my health when I actually ended up in hospital. After a lot of times, at the big stint where they told me they didn't know if I was going to live through, I actually had the psychiatrist was called in to see me, because I said, look, I'd rather die than go through what you're talking to me about. And he spoke to me about the reason I was in such a struggling mental state was because I'd been in denial about my health for so long. It's like, no, it's not a thing. I'm going to work my way through this. And I just wouldn't look at it. I wouldn't face it. So I wouldn't look at the negatives. I'd only focus on the positives. And that's irrational. And then so what happens is it throws you. And it can be the other way, where if you're so focused on the negative, sometimes the positives can actually throw you in the other way. And that's, that can be pretty challenging for people mental health wise. But one thing that I've really learned through this journey is that balance, not only in our physical exercise and training and nutrition, but also in our mental state, being centered is huge. So if we think of like a pendulum, most people are swinging, they're up on the high, they're on the positive pole of the pendulum. Wow, this is incredible. And then when things go wrong, it's like that latch lets goes and they just swing all the way to the other side. And now they're on the opposite pole of negative. And so they're on these huge swings. And when you think about how much energy that's using to swing from one pole to the other, it's kind of like you have a high day and a low day, and you're just trying to get by because there's so much going on. But when you can sort of step back, observe, and be centered, you just keep marching forward. So that balance has been huge.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think in line with what Thinkmental about it, mental health can be pretty simple when you try not to overdo things just for the sake of someone telling you that's the right way to go about it. I think balance is I'm really glad to say that actually it's one of those things that you probably ignore because of the 21st century mindset of hustle, grind, hit the ground hard, don't sleep, woke culture. It's one of the, and if you think about it from a mental health point of view, I know myself well enough, and this is why one of the pillars is self-awareness. I just know that I'm not that guy. I'll work hard during the day, and I was up at 7 this morning, 6:30, doing an interview for Thinkmental, and I'll be up today editing both podcasts until 10 o'clock. But I know that past a certain point, I need to get to bed because I'm not going to be able to do the same thing I did this morning again if I keep pushing and grinding and hustling. And it's got to be real with it and just know yourself well enough to know your limits. So I'm really glad you said that. And it probably leads into my first sort of topical question that relates to what you teach, but also probably relates, and I don't know if you've thought about this before, but when you talk about when you were a kid and you're fighting back, pushing back, and trying to, I guess, be that survivalist, and then when stuff happened with your health, do you feel like at first you weren't able to be vulnerable and let the ego go, and I guess you were in that fight mode still? Or do you think you were at a stage there where subconsciously you were fine to accept that? Because I think you mentioned, no, I'm not that's not happening. Like, I'd rather die rather than letting the ego go and be vulnerable for a second. Do you think that's sort of how it all went?
I literally started laughing as you asked that because I was like, oh, that hits. You're bang on. I was not giving myself the space to be vulnerable in my own path and journey. So not, like in the answer to that, no, I wasn't vulnerable at all. I was in straight up denial. I didn't want to face the emotional pain that maybe I couldn't get better, or that maybe I wasn't doing the right thing. I was so stubborn in my ways that no, like, I will work harder and I will get through this. That's what I used to do. If I'd wake up in the morning and I'd plaster the toilet bowl in blood, I'd be like, okay, I've got to work harder. So I'd go and punish myself on a run and I'd pound myself into the pavement because I'm like, this is how, the winners get through. This is how the Navy SEALs would do it. They go and work harder. So that was my way of coping emotionally, which is how I'd been conditioned since I was a kid. If things get painful, work harder. So you can only imagine when your health's going down and you need to rest, and the worse it gets, the harder you work. You're just like it's an exponential curve downward. And that's why it got so bad. It wasn't that the shift point for me, and this is why I speak so passionately about it. The shift point for me wasn't until the doctors and surgeons said, you have 24 to 48 hours to live if this doesn't go right. And I was like, I might not see my family again. And I barely had time with them. That's when it clicked to me, like, you've got stuff to work on, kid. Like, you are so far from what you think is right. And that's when I made the decision, like almost I believe it was like the next day, I was like, okay, I need to enroll in one of these silent meditation retreats to learn the other side of life. And that was that experience for me where I was able to actually become vulnerable to myself. I think, or I feel that I was vulnerable to others in a leadership way. I'd express my challenges to others and my mistakes and my errors to others in a way where I could kind of lead by example so that they'd feel safe and have permission to do so as well. But that's obviously grown a lot in the last couple of years, and something that's huge to me now is that vulnerability in all aspects, to really to be the guy that steps up and shows his emotions so that others, it's incredible when I post up a video of, if it's me crying or me expressing something emotional in that way, the amount of messages that I get from people going, wow, I needed that to know that it's all right for me to do the same. And the amount of men especially that reach out is mind blowing. So whenever I can, I will put it up because I know it gives others the permission slip to go, hey, he's a pretty badass guy and he's letting that out. Okay, if he can, I can too. And honestly, vulnerability, if those that are in the space have heard of Brené Brown, She has an incredible TED talk where she's basically the world leader in shame and vulnerability and courage. She's got some incredible books on it, and I know we've spoken about her, Jimmy. That
Yeah.
Vulnerability is the ultimate courage, or vulnerability is the ultimate strength, because most in the mental health space, a lot of people are challenged by the thought of expressing their authentic self or their emotions, because they feel like being vulnerable like that is a weakness. But when you really, again, come down to the subconscious level, if they're willing to face the emotion, it's like they're willing to face a fear. But if they're not willing to face the emotion, that in itself tells you that there's a fear there that they're not ready to overcome. Because it's kind of like, think of like a push bike jump, there's a big double, and someone else faces it and you won't, then you can see which one has the fear or the guts, so to speak, or the courage. It's the same thing with our emotions, and expressing them it is so powerful to be able to express them, one, privately, secondly, to someone close to you, and third, publicly. It is huge. And the more that you can, the more free you feel, because you can show all aspects of yourself. Obviously, there's a time and a place. There's I actually had an analogy brought to me today. It was a quote actually from a friend down in Victoria. And there was a wise monk and a man in a straitjacket. And because we're all humans, we all go through emotions, all of us. But the man in the straitjacket said to the monk, "How am I considered crazy and you're considered such a wise man when we go through the same thing?" And the monk simply said, "I know when to show what I need to show for others and when I need to be in my own space." And that really hit me, because we all go through emotions, but being able to, to express them in a time where it serves others is really important. So,
yeah. And it's so powerful to understand that. Firstly, I love the analogy. I think it's important to understand that why someone doesn't, why yourself doesn't want to be vulnerable, or why you do want to be vulnerable. And I think for a lot of people, especially young people, it's fear of being vulnerable means you're fearful of uncertainty. You're scared of what you might uncover about yourself, good or bad, and what you've done in the past, especially, I think, to yourself, but potentially others. And that was really confronting for me. And it might have come with maturity as well. But recently I've changed my whole relationship with my parents, based on the fact that I was vulnerable enough to go, what do I tell people, and how do I tell people about my relationship with my parents, which was, we are best friends. We have a great open relationship, which we kind of did. But there's a lot of times where I was an absolute asshole because of how much they give and how much I thought I was entitled to. And being vulnerable and going, I'm not as good as I think I am as a person or a son. And opening the floodgates of accepting that, and accepting, wow, I was a shit son then. I was a shit son then. I was a shit son then. And those little things that you do, it doesn't have to be a major change, but reflecting on and being vulnerable and going, I've called mum and said, look, I've realized I was not as good as I thought I was being to you, blah, blah, blah. And eventually you think little things like that can improve your mental health like nothing else, because the simple act of going, I don't know what is on the other side of this vulnerability, but I need to get it out. I need to do it. I need to just, and the same thing with Thinkmental. For so long, I thought, if I do a YouTube channel, if I do a podcast, if I put myself out there, knowing what men are like and knowing what the boys are like, you're going to get shit thrown at you. But eventually I got to a point where I was like, this is what I want to do. This is something that is enlightening for me. It makes me feel good. It's therapeutic. Like this morning, I woke up and had a chat with the guy who's a performance coach or life coach. And it was therapeutic for me to wake up and do something that productive in the morning, and it takes vulnerability to put my phone up to my face and say, "G'day everyone, I'm Jimmy, blah, blah, blah." But it's my form of therapy. It makes me feel, and all it took was me to be vulnerable.
Yes. There's two things to speak to that. And there's two topics. One is completion and completing relationships. And the other is self-acceptance, which I feel are crucial and really important for us to discuss in this. So completion or completing relationships, the level to which we're triggered by someone, it could be someone we've just met, is the level to which we are triggered or incomplete with someone from our past. So think, for example, you've had a really dominant, alpha, forceful, belittling boss in the past, and you didn't, you weren't sweet at the end. You don't chat. When you think of him, you're like, oh, asshole, or whatever it was, like he treated me this way. Basically what happens, because this is the subconscious, it goes, what's happened in the past? How do I protect myself? That's how we're wired. As soon as someone else in our life shows up with that kind of energy or behavior or, characteristics or traits, we go, oh, paint them with the same brush, treat them the same way. And we close off and we respond and react in the same way to them, even if they're not deserving of it, because of the past. The same thing it can be with a partner. So for us as males, it could be the previous partner. We've had these challenges going on. And then when another, partner comes into our life, for me, for example, if I have had another woman come into my life and that same behavior comes up, I've treated it and reacted the same way and just repeated that pattern. And so what I learned in this space was that we will always be triggered by the same people in the same way if we do not take responsibility for our part in the relationship from the past and complete it. So the way that we do that is those people that we've had damaged relationships with or trauma with that we haven't, quote unquote, sorted out, the way we complete it is if they're alive and we can speak with them, then we reach out. And all we do is we take responsibility for everything that we've done. We don't ask them for forgiveness. We don't ask them to apologize. We don't ask anything of them. Because if they had passed away, we can't ask of anything. But to complete the relationship, all we can do is go, you know what? I sucked at this and I sucked at this and I wasn't good at this and I wasn't great at this and I am sorry. And I want to take 100% complete responsibility for our relationship, being the way it was. So let's say it's a marriage breaking up, and I've seen this firsthand, is people have had a divorce and they haven't spoken for years and they're going through the same issues in their current, relationship or marriage. It's repeating. And when they go through and they clear that relationship up and they take full responsibility for it, even if, they felt it was the partner's, their ex's issues that were the main issue, when they take responsibility for it, it sets them free because they're empowered. Because when you've given the blame on the other person, they hold the torch and they're the one burning you. But when you kind of take the torch back and go, you know what, I take responsibility for all of this, it enables you to be free of that because you've taken it on in that way. And people go, geez, but what happens if they really did do something wrong? That's besides the point, because if someone has passed, we can't change or tell them. We can only clear it ourselves, because if you're still struggling and they've passed, it tells you it's not them, it's you. Yeah. So completion is huge. And I've gone through that with my mum, my dad, my sisters, previous partners, previous bosses. And was I nervous? Heck yeah, I was. But what I realized was that I had previous bosses in the past that were in that role, dominant. They were very authoritarian in their own way, so on and so forth. And it didn't sit well with me. And so whenever that kind of typically male superior figure showed up in my life, I just looked at them in the same way. They don't care about me. We're a number. They're just using us, rah, rah, rah. And then when I was like, ooh, this isn't going to help me in the future, I made the calls and I cleared that up and took responsibility from my end. And when I did so, I was able to actually see how I played the role in in that partnership, that relationship we had. And it freed me from it. And now I don't see everyone that comes into my life that takes that role. I see them as a new person because it's complete. And that's the same thing with any kind of relationship, but so huge. And that links in with, partly with what you said about mum and dad, is that completion of relationships is something that I really want people to be able to take on. And does it take some vulnerability? 100%, because you're calling someone that probably thinks, may think the same thing as you, or at least hold the same energy. And you're going putting yourself on the line going, it's my fault. It's my responsibility. I did this, and this. But you know what's funny? Of all the people that I've spoken to that have done it, they've never once had someone go, yeah, you asshole, it was your fault, and then hung up.
They're a
What
bit
you do
shocked.
is they go, literally what happens almost every time is it's silence. You say all that, and then they're like, you can just hear crickets. And then because you've given them the space and you've created permission to take responsibility for your actions and be vulnerable, they reciprocate because they've seen you take that and they go, wow, okay. And usually it's silence, silence, silence. Yeah, you know what? It's my fault too. Yeah, I did this and I did this and this. And I, you know what? I want to take responsibility for my end. And that's clearing. And then it's like, oh, wow. And then you're chatting and you're enjoying and it's incredible. So that's completion. And we are the clearing for others. Our actions give permission for others to do what we're doing. It's just the same as, I never knew this, but, me sharing my story and sharing it in a positive, empowering way now gives the clearing or permission for others to go, hey, I've been through some rough stuff too, but I can see the positives from it. So we literally are giving whatever we put out to the world is kind of being put out for others to step into, which is why I'm really, really mindful now of the energy I put out. If I'm in a crappy place, I don't go and see people. I take the time to be in my own because I don't want to be giving that to others. I make sure when I'm in seeing people and in public, I'm in the best place I can be because I know that is what they step into and they mirror. And I guess with that, the second point that I wanted to talk about is self-acceptance. And this one hits deep and it hits hard because I've only realized recently that self-acceptance is the answer to almost every driven person's, someone that's like subconsciously driven, like they're not in control. They're kind of like obsessed with having to do more, experience more, make more money, accrue more material items. And that's to do with the self-acceptance. And I'll give this explanation and the personal experience of how I've come. And then those that are listening, you can see if the shoe fits and if you feel it too and go, oh, wow. And then you can do what you please with it. But there's the two things that I now realize to me are the most important things in my life are my identity and self-acceptance. And I spoke about identity with Trav, and we'll probably tap into it in this conversation. But with self-acceptance, although we think we're doing most of our day-to-day life consciously and making our decisions, the things that we're doing consciously, almost all of it, as we know, 95% of it is driven by that subconscious. So the clothes we wear, the way we get our hair cut, the way we sit, the way we talk, all of those things are subconsciously driven. When you actually sit and assess them, you realize, wow, I'm not actually making many decisions myself. I've done this with like literally the watches I wear, the drinks that I have. I'm like, I think that I've chosen this today, but when I actually like sit down for 10 minutes and break down how I sat down with, homemade kombucha instead of, a Coke, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't make this decision at all. And so what was happening was a previous housemate of mine, Shani, she's probably been one of my greatest teachers. And that's because she could see a lot of my blind spots that I couldn't see. And she came to me a few months ago and said, you're so driven. I was like, yeah, I am. And she's like, but do you feel like you're in conscious control of your drive? And I was like, I'm not sure, but I don't really care because I'm driven and that's a good thing. And she was like, okay, just sit with that. And she's very, wise in the way she would challenge me and question me. She'd just kind of leave me and, me analytical permeating on. I'm like germinating for the next 6 hours, like, And what I sort of sat with was this drive is great, but I should be able to pick and choose when I'm driven or not. And at the moment, she was right. I wasn't choosing. And most people on the entrepreneurial, the personal development journey aren't choosing. And this is, where it leads into the self-acceptance. So I was like, okay, I'm doing a lot. Like I'm trying to learn more, achieve more. And my biggest thing in my life before, the last few months when I realized this was growth. I've got to grow. And so, because I said to her, when I came back to her, I said, okay, I can see that it's because I want to grow. Isn't that a good thing? She's like, well, it can be a good thing, but are you in control of it? And, consciously, I'm like, yeah, I'm in control. I choose if I want to go and do journaling or meditation or breath work or, go to another seminar. I said, okay. She said, just be with that for a little bit more. And then I was like, oh, there's something under here, because I was feeling resistance and like reaction, and the ego was being like, yeah, it's good to be driven, growth minded, and all of that. It's a good thing. And I still agree with that to an extent. And this is where the big turning point for me was. And I hope that those listening get this turning point too. So for me, I was like, okay, why do I need to be growing so much? And what happened was I was like, okay, I need to be growing because growing means I'm progressing. Okay, well, and you kind of reverse engineering, you're going backwards through it or down the layers. And I was like, well, okay, why do I need to be progressing? Well, if I'm not progressing, I'm stagnant. Okay. And then I didn't like that feeling. I was like, stagnant. I was like, well, why can't I be stagnant? Why can't I plateau? And then it was like, well, because then you're not getting better. Why do I need to be better? And then I started getting really, really uncomfortable. And I was like, this is when you're finding you're getting down to something deeper that will have a big shift, because you start finding emotion and resistance that you don't like. And that, for those listening, when you get to that point where you're like, yeah, I don't like this, that's where you forge forward for that period of time, because that's where the growth lies. That's where the blind spot is. That's where the growth comes. So I was like, okay, I need to be growing. Why do I need to be growing? Because I need to get better. Why do I need to be better? Well, if I'm not getting better, then I'm me. Oh, okay. What's wrong with being me? Ooh. And then when I kind of sat with it, I was like, I need to be doing. Me is doing. I was like, well, what happens if I wasn't doing? And that's when I was freaking out. I was like, I couldn't not be doing. I couldn't. And then I was like, okay, well, what happens if I just laid down in my bed and did absolutely nothing? Because for me to lay down in my bed for 6 hours of the day, if I was to watch a movie, I'd be trying to learn from the movie, or I was watching the movie to do something, to get a result. So it was like, watch it to relax, or watch it to learn. Or if I was laying in my bed, I would meditate to improve my mental control, or breath work to release something, or, do my Rubik's Cube to train my mind. It was always doing this for that, which was always an improvement. So I was like, okay, what happens if I just laid in my bed and did nothing, just stared at the roof? And that was probably like, I now know that was my biggest fear. I was like, no, I couldn't do that. That's over the top. That's nuts. I was like, that's when I knew. I was like, if there's a reason that I physically feel like I can't do that, I need to do it. But why? And that's where I needed to kind of work it out. And what I came to realize was this fear of me doing nothing was that, I'm 26. I was carrying this from when I was 10, when I felt like if I wasn't doing something, how I was saying I needed to be different was protection. I needed to study more or work harder or get the top test or be training or whatever it was at that age as my protection. And I realized the words that I'd been told when I was, bullied, and the messages or the stories I'd made from it was that if I was just little Toddy Jarratt, as I was, because I wasn't sporty, I was a chubby, overweight kid, and I was, alone and isolated sort of thing. I was alienated, and I didn't fit in because I wasn't, the sporty kid. And it was like, whatever I did, I couldn't fit in. I couldn't get into any groups. And what that meant to me and the stories that came up as that 10-year-old self, and some of the words I was told were, yeah, you're fat, you're overweight, you're chubby, you're uncoordinated, you're a loser, you don't fit in, you got no friends. But what I made that mean, and what's really most important, is that how we internalize the words that are given to us. Because someone can say to you, you look tired, but you internalize that as, I'm ugly. And so for me, what happened was my internalization was, if I'm just me, I'm weak, I'm vulnerable, and I'm inadequate. They were the 3 words. And when I had that, I just started crying, because it was like I was going back to my 10-year-old self. And I was just like, holy shit, everything that I've ever done, everything that I've ever achieved, everything that all the incredible people that I've worked with and I've met have been this way because I was needing to do more, achieve more, become more, know more, learn more, grow more, so that I wasn't weak, vulnerable, or inadequate. I was protecting myself. And when I had that realization, I was like, so if I just laid in my bed and did nothing, I'd be weak, I'd be vulnerable, and I'd be inadequate. And when I realized that, I was like, I fucking hate myself. I hate my ordinary self. That's why I needed to grow, because I didn't like myself as I was because of what I'd been told when I was bullied. And for me, I know that this is a big step. Most, a lot of people may not be ready to go, well, that's my biggest fear, that's my biggest challenge, let's jump in. For me, that's what I do, because I want to find the other side, because I know that that's the empowerment for others. And so what I did, and if people are ready to do it, it's what will change their life. What I did was I was like, okay, what's the scariest thing for me to do? It's like lay in my bed for a whole day and do absolutely nothing. Every time I catch myself trying to like meditate or breathe in a particular way, or plan my future or my systems or whatever, I'd bring myself back and just lay there and be a lazy shit, quote unquote. And that day was hard. That was back in March this year, I think. But the first hour or two, I was really, really struggling, because it was like I was allowing those feelings to come up. You're weak. Why are you doing this? You're vulnerable. You're inadequate as this person. Like, look at you. You're not out there getting better. You're not out there achieving more. People could, if someone walked in right now, they'd pick on you for not working hard enough or whatever it was, because my protection, my barrier, my shield was down, because everything I'd ever done to protect my ego, myself, was gone. I was like the ultimate vulnerability, and it was just me laying in my bed doing nothing. But what came through that day was, as the day progressed, I was like, I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. Nothing's changed. The world hasn't collapsed. Everyone else, people don't care. People are driving past our road. My housemates are walking in and out. I'm just in my room being quiet. I was like, so I started to come to a place of kind of accepting the moment without the fear. And then what it led to was this acceptance of myself, being weak, being vulnerable, being inadequate, and going, you're none of those. Like, you laying here right now in your biggest fear, you're perfectly fine. You're breathing. Your body is fine. You've done all of these incredible things in your life. Look at you. You're epic. You're amazing. You're a beast. You're a savage. And then it started to become like self-acceptance and like, yes. And then appreciation. And this moment, it's like the phoenix rising of like, yes, like, look at this. I don't have to do anything, and I can love myself. I can appreciate myself. I get to accept myself. And now I don't, because before I had to do as an obsession so that I wasn't unprotected or weak, vulnerable, inadequate. So although people saw me as this, wow, you're so, you're achieving so many things at such a young age, you've done all of these cool things, I was doing it from a place of scarcity, from a place of lack, from a place of pain. And when we speak of like Dave Goggins, everyone thinks he's such a beast. Listen to his story. He's in all sorts of pain. And he said that in a few podcast interviews. I don't want everyone to be like me, because I'm fucked up. I'm in lots of pain, and he says those things. But, people take from that what they will in his, in his interviews. It's more motivation for them. But in this experience of me going, all of these things I've done have been from an obsessive compulsion or a subconscious drive that I haven't had control of, because I've needed to do it because of my deepest fear of being, inadequate in myself. And after that day, it was like, I can lay around and do nothing now, which used to be like, to me, the scariest thing. And I love it. I'm just in a perpetual state now of acceptance of myself and joy, because self-acceptance is the key to joy, because you don't then need to be doing anything or being anyone or achieving a thing to love yourself. And because, we talk about self-love, but if you're, and this was me, I had the incredible morning routine. I had the incredible evening routine. Every day I meditated, I did breath work, I did the journaling, I did the gratitude, I did the mindset work, I did the training, I did the Rubik's Cube, the juggling, the eating, the this, the drinking, the that, the fasting, the cleansing, all of the programs, all of the seminars, all of the courses. And I was still obsessively driven subconsciously. And it wasn't, I did everything until I did nothing. I wasn't free. And so that day back in March was when I was like, wow. And I mean this when I say it now, that I don't feel consciously, and at least the experiences I've been through, I don't fear death anymore. If I was to, if someone said to me tonight, like, you're going to die tonight, I'm like, okay, I'm sweet with that. And I know that sounds like pretty full on, but I honestly feel like that's what I came to when I realized I was self-accepting, because I felt whole and complete. And the biggest thing that people find on their deathbed in their later years of their life, and I'm fortunate to have had it so early, is that the biggest thing that they, that they're scared of is that they've got these regrets. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I don't want to die, because they feel incomplete. But when you get to that point of feeling complete in yourself, you're like, I'm accepting now of what's happening. And that's, I guess, why, if I could say to anyone that's on the personal development journey, that they're so driven, they're so, that if they would call themselves the hustler, the grinder, just take a little bit of time, take a couple of moments to go, if I didn't do, how would I really feel about myself? Would I be scared of how others view me? Would I be worried that others might judge me as lazy or incompetent, or, not this or not that? Or how is my self-image affected by not doing? And for other people, it might be the opposite. We hear the situations of the mums that, like, my purpose in life is to be a mum. I've questioned my mum on this, and I know that, as I said, she'll listen, and I know that this will be a challenge for her to hear, but we are so open, and because we've completed our relationships, that she said, my purpose in life is to be a mum. I said, okay. I said, can I ask you a question? She said, yeah. I said, what happens if tomorrow all of us kids died? And she's like, I wouldn't know how to live with myself. And that's when I kind of had that moment of, there's something missing there, because if the purpose of someone's life is in that way completely outside of the self, and if the kids were gone, then it's like, I'm done. I wouldn't want to live anymore. Then there's that, like, it's an obsession to be that, to feel something that's not fully there in the self. And I know that will be hard for mums that listen to this, and those that are really drawn in that purpose. But I'm not saying this to challenge or trigger people, because I honestly love everyone, and I only want the best for every single human being on the face of this planet. I say it for you to just have a question to ask yourself, because if it frees you the way it freed me, then holy shit, I want it for every single person on the face of this planet, because it is amazing. And I'm now in the conscious driving seat of my life. I thought I was before, and most people that are hearing this are probably like, yeah, no, I am. But when they really get to take that step back and do that thing, or not do the thing, as it was in my case, your whole perspective on life and the reason of what or why you're doing it is just reversed. And that's self-acceptance. Because we do the self-love experiences, we hear the self-love, the affirmations in the mirror, and the gratitude and the eating well, and doing all of those practices, having the me time. But if you're feeling like if you miss them, or you don't get them done a few days, you're being hard on yourself, there's something under that. Or if you're feeling that you've got a pressure to do them, or you're upset at yourself when you don't get them done, there's something to that as well. Because there's a doing, it's not the being. And that's what I realized, was I was doing these things as a way that I wouldn't feel what was under there. So self-acceptance is, in that way, it's like, if anyone hears this and they that radiates with them, if you hear it, just send me a message on, like, hey, this is what's come up for me. How would I go about that? I'm happy to there's not a specific way, but just to give a guide. I guess you can hear from my example, I needed to do. So what's the opposite of doing? Nothing. Doing nothing, being. And it's the same thing. If you got a fear of heights and you jump out of a plane, you pretty well overcome that fear, and then you're free. So, yeah.
I'm going to be honest, Study. That blew my fucking mind. It absolutely blew my mind. And I'll tell you why. One reason, if you look at, like, you and your current socials and your life and what you do and what you've done and what you've been through, you'd say, oh, he's at the place he needs to be for himself. He puts himself together like he's at where he needs to be. He's cool to be conscious guy. He's that guy. And what blew my mind was it took doing nothing, and you touched on it, doing nothing to see the most growth, ironically. Doing everything was your aim of getting growth, or does your driver for growth was your thing, but it took doing nothing to actually see the most growth, which blew my fucking brain off, firstly. But I think to the second point that blew my mind was I was thinking about, okay, what's something I've done, or what's something I do or don't do? And instantly I thought of what my literally a recent thing was. And I guess I can give my example for people listening is since the age of 4, I've been the AFL guy. Like I was a semi-professional athlete. Haven't stopped playing footy since I was 4. And I'm from WA, which is an AFL state, moved to Queensland, and this is where it'll link into our next discussion about identity. But I've just always been that guy. I've been the footy guy. I'm the guy that's going to make the AFL. I'm the friend that in Queensland, because no one really plays footy. He's the guy. I was the young gun. I got all the awards, and then age, maturity, things happened. I didn't grow. I've been the same height since year 7. And things didn't pan out the way I wanted. But I was the guy that didn't drink until I was 18. I didn't party. I didn't eat Maccas. I worked my ass off. I was professional. I did all the right things. I did everything to the letter, because I was like, if I'm going to make it, it's going to be because I fucking worked for it. And I was forever just like, I'm the AFL guy, and didn't get picked up, didn't get drafted. Devastating, obviously. But for so long, I still had that in my brain that I'm the AFL guy. But what changed and what made me miserable for the last 5 years until recently was everything I did. I never really put my heart and soul into it, even though I knew I had the potential in me, because of the trauma of like, well, I did it once. I went 100% at once and it didn't work. So why the fuck should I try again? And that was the subconscious. It wasn't me thinking it, but it was my subconscious controlling my decision-making. And the moment that I decided I'm going to accept that I'm no longer the footy player, that's not me. Because I tried everything. Became on the footy board. I was a leader. I was a player welfare manager. I tried everything to change the perspective of what footy was to me, to stay around.
Yes. Yeah.
But after about 3 years of fighting I'm going to quit, I'm not going to quit, everything happened. I got fat. I got unfit. I didn't want to train. I got injured because I didn't want to train. And then I was miserable. Then I found excuses. I was blaming the coach. I was blaming the players. I was blaming the club. I was blaming everything. But then I looked internally, I just went, maybe I'm just trying to fight something that doesn't need to be fought. Maybe I just need to let go of the shackles and move on for a little bit. Might be forever, might be for 2 years, might be 3, might be whatever. But what came of it was, 1, a weight off my chest, but 2, this podcast, this relationship that I've now built with you, and friendship I built with Trav, things that I wouldn't think would happen, but it was always that underlying, I've got potential, and I've got, because I was telling myself, I'm just not the entrepreneur type. I'm not the guy that works outside of his own job. I'm the 9-to-5 guy, and that's it. And as soon as I just let go and accepted that I don't have to be the footy player, people will still love me if I'm not a footy player. My parents will still want to talk to me, and funnily enough, that's when my relationship improved with mum and dad. I wasn't like tense. I was just so free and let go, and like nothing. I get pissed off every now and again, but nothing really bothers me. Like, if things happen, then things happen. If they don't, they don't. If I make zero, like I said to you, if I make $0 on this podcast, I couldn't give a flying fuck, because I'm free. Like, doesn't impact me anymore. And it's because there's not that subconscious lingering thing of, I need to be someone that I'm not.
Yes.
And that's why it blew my mind.
It's the subconscious shackle to that thing is what causes the tension, the pressure, the expectation to be that way without us. It's our blind spot. We don't know, but you've gone through that transition, and a lot of the time it is completely letting go of the thing that we're, that's what I need to do, letting go of doing. For you, it's, letting go of AFL in that way. And there's even in a part of it, sometimes we even need to kind of like, we can let go. And then there's even times we need to kind of like push it away actively to give ourselves that bit more space, because that kind of gives us more wiggle room to find more. And that is a perfect example. And I want, speaking to the why of this, I just want people to know, because, we're brought up very much in a science-based environment. And I know that science makes sense to people. So the reason that this functions the way it does in the mind is not because of a conscious decision, but because of the way we are wired with our nervous system. So if we go back to the easy example, a primitive time, and you're sitting down with your tribe or whatever, and you see, for the first time in your life, you see a lion. You're kind of like, oh, that's cool, big cat. And then it's walking towards you. You're like, oh, sick. And then it's, I think it's a pride of lions. They start roaring and then attacking you, and they, kill members of the family or whatever. You escape. That experience is wired in your nervous system, in your subconscious. You know this for a fact, because everyone will relate to this, that if you were sitting there at that, next time around and you saw a lion, before you can even think consciously, you're like, get out, run. And everyone just legs it. Because what's happened is the nervous system has gone, that's a danger. That caused us pain in the past, and an emotional pain. We don't like that. Avoid it. Instinct, stay away, run. But the thing is, we do that now in the day-to-day. If you've been a kid where, think of it, you're walking home from school and then you're walking through a dark alleyway and you get, gang bashed or something there, you're never going to walk through a dark alley again by choice. You're going to avoid that because the nervous system has in there as a protective mechanism. Don't do that because there's pain involved. And it's the same thing with athletes when they have, a first big injury. I was speaking about this with one of my young prodigies the other day, was that he had no fear until he had his first major injury, which was multiple broken bones in his foot. He broke like 13 bones, just shattered his foot. And I said that, hey, there's that bit of fear or nervousness now. You're not choosing that. You want to go and win these national titles. But your nervous system, because he said it was a 10 out of 10 pain. He said, that was the worst thing I've ever felt. And he said, I want you to know that now the little bit of fear that's coming up is not your choice. That's because your nervous system's gone, last time this happened, we felt that pain. Do what we can to avoid it. So don't take the risk. Don't get in that position, so on and so forth. That the same thing is happening, for you with the Aussie rules. It's like, as you said, I've put everything I have, and this time it didn't work. I don't want to do that again. And that's how most people live their life. That's like an avoidant relationship. When people have, they've invested, they're the kind of people that close off in intimate relationships where they've put themselves fully in something before, and then they've been hurt. And so they go, no one's ever getting beyond this boundary. And they don't realize the why, but they just think that's who they are. It kind of leads into identity, which we'll talk about in a minute. But they then go, I'm that person. I don't let people in. And they go, no, that's just who I am. But really, it's a subconscious having a wiring in there that goes, you've done this because you felt such a pain before. You never want to feel that again. But what that does is closes off like half of our life, really, because, the opportunities, let's say for you with Aussie rules, that means for the rest of your life, if you didn't get to that point of acceptance, you'd never go all in on anything again. Because you go, no, I'm just, I'm the middle guy. And for me, I would never have been able to do nothing and enjoy doing nothing. Now I can have the freedom to actually chill out and feel good about it. Whereas in the past, I could never, ever do that. And some people would go, that's awesome. You work so hard, you'd achieve so much. But yeah, I almost nearly killed myself twice, not knowing why. So it's being able to, yes.
Can I ask you, before you had this moment in March, how did you go with socializing with friends, aka in most senses doing nothing unless you were doing work with them?
Everything was viewed about how I could get more from it. If I was, if you and I were catching up before March, I'd be like, okay, what can I get from this to help me grow, to help me learn, so every conversation I'd be digging for learning, for understanding. If I was talking to my family, I'd be studying them. Okay, how are they interacting psychologically so I can pick up and use this so I'm getting better? Everything was about better, better, better. That's awesome. That's an incredible trait to have. But again, it means you never, ever get to switch off. And that means your nervous system is always upregulated in that sympathetic state. And that's how the body breaks down. So yeah, it was always about learning. Even if it was people that, when you're in those situations where you didn't want to be around people, I just try to understand, why do I not like this kind of person? Why do we not agree? And just study everything. Everything was about me getting better. So yeah.
Do you think that, and this is just a random question that I was thinking of, but do you think that people with panic disorders and that people that have a lot of panic episodes, that links into that trauma and that experience of, this has happened before, so why wouldn't it happen again? And I ask that question because I live it, or I have lived it until recently, is shopping centers. For some reason, I had a panic attack once. I was hungover or something that caused it. And every time I go to a Westfield, it's going to happen in my head. It's going to happen. Yeah. And not until recently, and I was talking about this in another episode, I've changed the self-talk, and I've changed the thinking to, whenever that subconscious thought comes up, I'm walking through Kmart, I just go, not this time, not this time, not this time, because I'm trying to train my brain to go, it's not going to happen every time. You have to know that. And do you think that's the case?
There's three, I would say off the top of my head, there's three answers to that, three parts to it. So the first part, in terms of overcoming it, that what you're saying, yes, is correct, in that's the same thing as like anxiety. It's a repeat thing. It recurs in the same situation. I've gone through that myself with my health, because of, when you've had intestinal issues, vulnerably and openly. I'm a 26-year-old man and I have shit my pants more times than I can count. And that's massive emotionally traumatic, like it linked to PTSD. Because whenever I'd go out and I didn't know where a toilet was, I'd literally go into survival mode and I'd just shut down. I'd freak out. And it was very much linked to particular places over time as well. If I'd had a bad experience there, it would be worse going there because it'd bring back that memory or that experience. And the way to overcome it is you can be threefold. One is being so present in the moment, which can either be like being in a meditative state, being solely fixed on the breath through your nose, or being so focused in what you're doing as a task, like you're on a mission. That's one way, because then the attention can't slip away. But that's still pretty challenging, which is why it's one. Because what can happen is you have just a momentary lapse, which happens all the time, and people get caught. Oh, I'm back here. Oh no. And then it happens. So the second way is kind of how you said, which is, you can work that self-talk. But the challenge there is that for some people, it becomes more of a physical experience and mental. If it's not quite as severe and it's just mental thoughts, for some people, you can, mental chatter, you can beat that just by, the inner dialogue. But if you start to become physically overwhelmed and you're starting to shake or tremor, or for me, my bowels would contract and I'm like, oh no, I've got to find a toilet. When you get into that state, the words in your head don't really beat what's going on in your stomach, sort of thing. So that can help if it's not as severe. And then the third is, I guess, the way you would overcome it is through getting down to removing the leverage of the why, which is objectifying it. The only reason something becomes traumatic to us is because we have a subjective emotional attachment to it, which is to say that, whatever has happened in the shopping center for you, or, for me, if it's being away from a toilet in those times, it's the same thing. We've had something in the past that our nervous system says, we don't want to do that again. And if we start going closer to that, then it's literally just a nervous system protecting us. You're going closer to that thing that happened in the past. You're going closer. No. And you can feel that. You get the shakes, you got the shivers, the heart's racing. That's the body just going, you've been here before and it wasn't good. And so when you can go, again, this is that self-awareness of being aware. So it might be, for you, shopping centers. I know I get X at shopping centers. Okay, when did this happen? And going back through, rightio. And we call this dismantling the upset. And what that involves is going, okay, what's the situation? Okay, supermarket, getting anxious. What's the physical sensations I'm feeling? And then, what's the triggering event? So going back to, when did it happen in the past? So when was the kind of first or major emotional experience that causes it to be wired in? And then from there, it's going from the triggering event and linking what we made that mean, or the story around it, because it's in the past. It's happened. We can't change it. objectively, that's a fact. We can't change what's happened 10 years ago. But what happens is we make meaning of that event, and that's where the emotional charge comes in. So when we can go back and look at the event and see it objectively and go, okay, this is all that happened. Why is it triggering me now? What have I made that mean? Or what are the words that are coming up in my head? So, for me, when I was younger, if I wasn't doing anything and I was just my ordinary self, I was told I was a fatty, I was weak, I was unsporty, I was, didn't fit in. So that they were like, that's what I made it mean. So I was like, I can't ever not do anything because that's then who I am. And it's in that way, being able to go back and go, okay, what was the two words, the meaning or the story I made around that? And when you can see it as a kind of like objective and you go, I made that mean that this place isn't safe. Supermarkets aren't safe because of this has happened. You go, is that really true? Or is that a story? And then you go, well, how many other people go into supermarkets every day and they're fine? Hundreds of thousands, millions, billions every day. Okay. And how many times have I been to a supermarket where I felt this way, but nothing's actually happened? Thousands, and something bad happened once. Okay. So do I need to continue worrying, and then it's once you've objectified it and can see it as it is as a fact, it removes that weight. Because what it is that the blind spot story that we're not seeing is the only reason we're in that state, that anxious state, or that, that nervous, fearful state, is because of the story. And once we get clear on that story and seeing it for what it is, we're like, you can make the choice. Next time it happens, does that need to continue? Or is that just an illusion in my head because it's in the past, it's not right now. So it's not real in this moment. It's just seeming real in my head, which is an illusion. Anxiety, as this is a perfect example. Anxiety and depression, and I know that this is going to be a challenge for some people to get, but at a simple form, they are mental illusions. And there's biology to it, but because we know biology is changed by thought, so on and so forth. Anxiety is when we're focusing on a negative outcome potentially happening in the future, which is not happening right now. That's how I was able to get through my time in the bed, because I was full of anxiety at that point in time. But I was, as you go through, it's not happening right now. Where's it happening? It's happening as like a little movie going on in my head. That's an illusion. It's a little picture in there that's not real. Okay, so anxiety is thinking about what could go wrong in the future that's not present. And depression is thinking about what bad has gone in the past and continuing that story into the now, and then obviously perpetuating it into the future. But it's fixating outside of the present, in the past or in the future. And this is where the biggest key, and it's easier said than done, but something for people to find out their own way, is presence. Is if you can, for me, it's to the breath. I breathe hard through my nose. If I'm feeling anxious or worried or nervous, I give myself a few sharp breaths through my nose to bring my attention to feeling the sensation around my nostrils. And then I just stay there as much as I can. If my mind wanders, I give myself, hey, come back to the breath. Because then I'm real and I'm in the here and now. And I know that whatever's happening is that illusion. So personal experience, if I'm in a shopping center, and this has still been happening, and I'm away from a toilet and I feel my stomach churn, which for context, there's been times in the past where, I've got 5 to 10 seconds to get from where I am to the toilet until I've cracked myself. And that's when you're in a shopping center and you don't know where the toilets are, you're freaking out when you feel that moment. You're like, I'm about to shit my pants in public and people are going to smell me and I'm going to be embarrassed and, all of this, that, and the other. What I've come to do now is go, I feel it. And I know, because what happens when I feel it is the mental story starts. This has happened in the past. This is the concern. Run, 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 run. You're not going to make it because, that's happened and there's emotional pain. So I want to try to avoid it. So what I do now is if I feel it, my trigger is to come to my nose. And then what I do is my cue, my wording is same kind of thing as you were saying before. But for me is it's the same as every other part of your body. So you can control it. And what I do is, because what happened in the past, I didn't realize, but I was like seeing like a bloodied, ulcered intestine that I felt like I had no control of. Now, as I'm saying it to myself and breathing, I'm like visualizing the control I have over like a perfect bowel, a pink intestine. And that gives me the centeredness to be able to go, it's funny because now the more and more I've done it, the more it cues that, hey, you've made it through this in the past. You used this cue before and you got from here to 500 meters up and you made it. So then it kind of gives me that confidence of, I've got this. I've got this. So yeah,
And
it's
and Andrew, I mean, this is, I'm going to say it's related but unrelated. From a physiological point of view, Andrew Huberman is someone I really admire, who is a sleep scientist, but also just a neuroscientist in general. And he talks about the power of breath, and obviously you know that. But from a physiological point of view, that moment where you know, in out through your nose, it regulates your heart rate, and it slows down your heart rate. If you choose to be, you know, in fast through your nose, out slow through your mouth, is physiologically will actually slow your heart rate, which slows your anxious thought and your panic state. And that's something that I had to learn, is that being present, like you said, and realizing when you're having that panic moment, what's happening? Your heart rate is pounding. But what if you did you were conscious on your breath? And what if when you're conscious on your breath, you slow down your heart rate, which slows down your anxious thought and anxious mind. And that's one of my cues is, and I probably have just done it without thinking about it, is as soon as I feel that way, is just slow the breath, fast in through the mouth, fast couple like triggering sniffs up the nose, just and out slow. And it's physiologically proven that it slows your heart rate down. Yeah, that's how powerful it can be.
It's also why we use the ice bath as a microcosm for training anxiety. Literally, we do, because when you go to get into the bath, your body's first response is, I want to get out. This is not comfortable. You know, we know that within 5 to 7 minutes of someone not being able to regulate their breath, if they're dropped into a frozen dam or whatever, they can get hypothermia. Yet we can sit in a chest freezer that's the same thing for 10 to 12 minutes. We're perfectly fine. The reason for that is because by controlling the breath, it sends a signal to the brain and to the nervous system that you're safe, you're controlled, you are fine. And we can regulate the autonomic systems in the body, which they didn't know was possible years ago. But with that specifically, when you go to get into the bath, the body wants to go into like an anxious state, sharp breathing, fast, shaking, tensing, racing heart rate, all of those things, muscles contracting. So it's literally an anxiety attack in a microcosm. Like you put someone in and that's what they do. And then you go, slow it down, breathe through your nose. And you mirror and match, and they slow down, their body relaxes, their limbs relax, their muscles relax. And if they can get to a 5 second in and a 5 second out through their nose, so 5 second length inhale and 5 second exhale, dude, you can sit in that ice bath for like half an hour, 45 minutes, however long you really want. Wim Hof has done it for hours. And that's solely because we're able to send the signal through from that to the brain and the nervous system that we're sweet. And if someone can get in an ice bath where that anxiety attack, so to speak, being physiologically or physically manifested, they can control that for the 3 to 5 minutes that they're in there, then they have that tool and that confidence and that belief that, hey, if I can do that in the bath, next time this thing happens in my head, I know I can beat that because I can beat the actual physical cold. This is just a story in my head. And it is so incredible to see how empowered. Look what I did. They have this realization. So it's honestly, the ice bath is one of the most powerful tools. I also use it as a drop-in to get in a deep meditative state, because when you're in there, to nail that 3 to 5 minutes, you have to be when you're beginning, so with your breath that you can't be anything but a meditative state. Because if you lose that concentration and that level of awareness there, you start to observe the cold in the body and you go, oh my gosh, my fingers are so cold. Oh, I can feel it. And then that, cascading effect begins. So yeah,
absolutely. It's powerful. And I'm conscious we don't have a lot of time, and we've got so much that we wanted to talk about, but knowing us and knowing it was going to happen, it was inevitable that we wouldn't get there. But the one thing that we did say that we wanted to look at outside of that self-acceptance was identity. But I wanted to sort of put a twist on it and talk about how do you think identity affects people's mental health when it comes to their day-to-day choices, decisions, interactions? I didn't put
I
that in
like
the
twists.
questions.
No, I like that twist. I literally, as you said, I'm putting a twist. I got that. There's that little bit of that, that challenge side of me that's like, ooh, challenge, let's go. Okay, so what part of identity affects the day-to-day mental health, or what impact does it have? So
Well,
for
who
context,
we
yep.
interact with, who do we socialize with, what
Got you.
choices do we make on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, got you. So with every single person listening right now, for the sake of the context, for this to really make sense, identity is something that I've personally discovered through my, the near-death experiences and losing my sense of who I was in this last 12 to 18 months. And I truly, truly believe from the bottom of my depths of my soul, the bottom of my heart, from everything I've experienced in my life, that the identity is the most transformative thing that could be brought to personal development. And I am so blessed and feel it is a gift that I've gone through what I've gone through to bring the identity and the system I've created to the world. The identity is the deepest part of our human experience, which is to say who I am. And the reason for this, because I guess that the listeners will need to know how identity functions to know how it affects. So we are told very much that what I do creates who I am. If I do the exercises, if I eat this way, if I do this thing, it will create who I am. But that's a very long and repetitive process that can take months to years to actually change. But if we reverse engineer the process, the actual truth is who I am creates what I do. And you know this because if you view yourself to be an unhealthy person, and you try to do the diet or do the training program or see the, whatever it may be, see the fitness professional, it'll be a period of time and most people will default back to what they were doing before because of the who I am. The who I am is the most important thing. So in terms of the human experience, if you think of, for a moment, think of like a dartboard or like a layered chart of concentric circles. Think of actually an onion of layers. And we know that the core of the onion is at the center and the layers are on the outside. So the outside layer as we peel off is our actions, which is like a moment to moment. Below the action is a behavior, which is just a more habitual action, something we do more regularly. Below behavior is our beliefs. And our beliefs are where most coaches and psychologists and psychiatrists work at the level of. Because our beliefs, if we have a belief that, money is the root of all evil and money is a bad thing, our behaviors are going to be around not obtaining much money and our actions are going to be about not keeping the money, for example. And below beliefs, which is fewer and far between with coaches and the mindset space, is values. And values are kind of like the buckets that hold all of our beliefs. So we have a values bucket around, let's say, finance, and that leads in the belief of, money is this, or money is that, or jobs are this, or employment is this, or income is this, And then we have the bucket on nutrition, and that says the belief around this food, or the belief around this kind of, dietary type, or this amount of calories, whatnot. So values are like the buckets that our beliefs go into. So it's a layer deeper. And that's the deepest I'd ever been to with any psychologist or psychiatrist or coach or anything like that. Was Tony Robbins and John Demartini are incredible, at the level of values. But what happened in my experience was that through losing from what I did, stopping my business, losing all of my friends, losing my associates, losing where I lived, pretty much my entire life, which I now know was my identity. When that was stripped away from me and I had these near-death experiences and it stripped everything and I started to see differently, I realized that I hadn't consciously changed my values, beliefs, my behaviors, my actions. And I kept coming back to this question of who am I? And I hadn't changed the doing consciously, but it had changed because my who am I, my identity had shifted. And then I had these aha moments, middle of 2020 last year when I was down south. And what I realized was that what I do creates who I am. My apologies, the other way around. What I do doesn't create who I am. Who I am creates what I do. And so our identity is how we view ourselves, kind of like our self-image. And it is the deepest layer of the subconscious because it is the I, the experience of who we are. And so if your identity, let's say, and we give an example here, and you know how you're saying interacting with people on the day-to-day. If you say, I'm a closed, if we use that example from before, actually, someone that's had a pain in the past where they let someone in and they hurt them. I'm a closed person. I'm a closed person. They just embody that each day. Someone tries to come in, they go, no, I'm a closed person. Or someone asks them a vulnerable question. No, like because that's just how they are. They don't even consciously say it, but their subconscious response is projected out. They go, like, I'm just going to give you this superficial answer. Or if you have someone that has an identity of, I'm an open, loving person, or let's use that one. Whenever you see someone, you're smiling, happy, and energized, and you're caring, or someone that's, let's say their identity is I'm an Olympic athlete. They live each day training, eating, sleeping, recovering, associating with people that are in alignment with that. So the identity is literally everything to our entire human experience. At this point in my life, there is nothing I have found or experienced or researched that goes deeper. And I am open to that being changed. I actually hope there is something different because I want to be able to learn in time. But at this point in my life, it is the most profound experience and tool we have. And what we can do is by reshaping, the way we reshape our identity, because it's the deepest layer of the subconscious, is by emotion and repetition. Because the two ways to rewire, a lot of coaches actually teach that the only way to rewire that subconscious is through repetition. Repetition, do, and that will change. But again, that goes back to the old saying of what I do creates who I am. The other way to rewire the subconscious is through direct emotion, which we know, but a lot of people seem to overlook. Think about it. How we said before, you have one experience with a lion and you are subconsciously wired for the rest of your life, run. There was no repetition in that. That was a one-off event, but the emotion was so deeply charged that it rewired the subconscious. So there's two ways, emotion and repetition. And so what we can do is use those two tools together, which is how I've developed the identity system, to rewire someone's identity to actually be what they desire. Because as I've said, most of our subconscious, we don't realize, is driving us, and it's not actually what we want. Because a lot of people want they want the $1 million salary, but they're consistently at the 100 grand or whatever it may be, or 50K or whatever, in that sense. And they're consciously wanting, but if we dug down in every single person I've worked with, if we dig down to that subconscious level, they have an I am that is at that level that they're at, not where they consciously want to be. And when your subconscious is 40 million times more powerful in processing than your conscious, you're not going to beat it with a conscious desire. And so the identity, if I was to put it in that kind of a way, is the identity being at the deepest level of the subconscious mind is imagine we're trying to dig up a plant, and when you kind of chop halfway down, you get the roots, but you don't get the base out. So you've got stuff left over. It's the same way in chopping at the plant. Right at the, if we're chopping the leaves, we're at the actions. And then we go to the stems and we're at the, the behaviors. Then we kind of go to the main trunk and we're at the beliefs. Then we get to the top level of the roots as we hit the ground, we're at the values. But beneath all of that, we've got to really get rid of that plant and have no residue left over where it will regrow and recreate itself, is to go to the identity. So it's the deepest level. And we need to do that because what happens is if we've developed a conscious belief or a conscious, goal that's at that, let's say the level of the stem or the leaves on top, and something else comes underneath and jams it at our roots, the whole plant falls out and you're stuffed, because there's something that comes underneath with more power, with more leverage, with more strength than you could have been able to control. And it's the same way. It's kind of like an uppercut. The harder someone comes in, the more of an impact it has. We're trying to bulletproof you. I'm not trying to. We are bulletproofing you against the hardest punch. It's like you can get hit by a truck and you're still all right because it's at the deepest layer and nothing else can penetrate through that. And that's the identity. And so when we can take someone from having an identity that's limiting or an identity that isn't necessarily what they desire, we can find out what they truly desire. We have a system and a process and operations in it that set it so that it is accountable through the whole way. And as I've said on the podcast before, it's unfuck-upable is the word I say. If you literally just follow the steps, that's what you get. Because if I gave you a Lego set and I gave you the instruction manual and I said, hey, here it is. Here's the pieces. Follow this to a T. If you do it to a T, you get it. But if you get halfway through and you're like, no, you know what? I'm not going to worry about step 14 and 17. You don't get the result. So that what I've realized is so much through the personal development journey and space is that there's a lot of coaching, but there is a lot of rooms for people to fall off and fall out of the progress and the structure. Where they might, if they fall off the bandwagon from this, they don't get the outcome. So it's designed so that you get so clear on exactly what you desire. And then in feeling first, fulfillment number one. So like that self-acceptance, then we go to the outcomes, the goals, the dreams. And then from there is the macro, the meso, the micro, the 3-step process that we implement, so that whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever it is, every single step between now and then is structured in a way that you can be checking that box. And then in that way, if you haven't got there, it's literally because you just haven't checked the box. And I've implemented this myself and it's worked to a T, and I've implemented it with all my clients. And the same thing, I'm just like, this is 100% success rate. I've never seen this in my life before with all of the stuff I've done. And that's where I say, like, if anyone is listening to the podcast right now and you've heard, what I've just said, and you're going, holy crap, okay, I get it. Literally search me up on Instagram, Todd_Jarratt, pause the podcast right now and just send me a message, because it's literally I truly feel what I've gone through. I've gone through what I have gone from the science to the near-death experiences to where I am, to all of these things happening to bring this to the world, because I know, and this is what I've had the experience of now, is the people that have been through it have gone, like, holy shit, when are you actually taking this to the public? Because at the moment, I'm only doing it privately with the top in the world athletes or those that are at the opposite end, because I know anyone else in the middle, if it works for the best of the best and the quote unquote the most challenged of the challenged, it works for everyone in between. And so that's what I've said to people is basically, if you hear this and go, holy crap, I get it, just send me a message and I'll help in any way I can. We've got a wait list at the moment for the first launch for when we take it out to the public, which I'm so excited about. And I truly feel like this is why I've been put on this earth. This is my life's work, is the identity.
Yeah.
So
it's a really good point, because I just thought of one guy's point of view on something similar, James Clear, who's obviously very popular and has a really popular book, Atomic Habits. But I think what he mentions around that topic is when it comes to habits and how we actually can be more effective with implementing habits, is telling yourself that I'm the type of guy that, I'm the type of person that, I am the girl that X. And instead of saying I'm just going to hit this goal and that's it, he talks about speaking as if you are that type of person. You act as if you're that type of person, embody the type of person you want to be. Exhibit A, I'm the type of person that runs a marathon every year. I'm the type of person that coaches people struggling with mental health and makes $100,000 a year, whatever it might be. And he says people are more likely to get small habits put in place and actually do them when they embody what they think type of person they want to be does, rather than
that's
a goal that's something outside of my identity.
To a T. And the reason for that, which links back to this identity, this point, and James Clear, like James' book, Atomic Habits, is incredible. And I've implemented a part of the tracker system in the identity system, because that's one of the biggest ways for our accountability. But there's obviously a lot more to it, because there needs to be so much of the depth of the subconscious to be rerouted and to where understood for that point of awareness to go, this is where I am, this is where I am going, and that's where everything is set out from. But with what you were saying about the type of person and the small, the small actions, and this one is quite a big part, is when it's who I am, I said who I am creates what I do. It's because when you are this person, it's just it's who I am. It's what I do. Like, that's just how things are. That's literally when you say, why do you do that? It's just who I am. Like, say to a millionaire, how do you make money? Oh, it's easy. It's just what I do. Like, because that's who they are. And the steps, when we're doing something as a goal, I have this goal. The goal is outside the self. Just think about it. As I say, I have this goal. It's like, well, I'm here and here's my goal. I'm not there yet. So it's external to the self. And for me to get there, listen to most people, I've got my steps and I've got to take action. And it's like I'm going outside of myself to get here. And the bigger the goal is, the further it is from here, the harder it is, the more effort they think is involved, the more, hard work and sacrifice it is to get there. And that's when we use the words goal and action. But when it's, this is who I am and I just embody this, because you are that person, you don't need to go outside of yourself, because that person is within. And then you're just embodying each day. And it's the biggest thing that has shifted my life, is me simply embodying my daily instruction manual. As you know, I'm very distinctive with my language and my vocabulary, especially around the system. Because if I said to someone, here is your goal and here are your steps, people think, oh, goal and steps. They think pressure, they think stress, they think lots of effort. If I said, here's your outcome and here's your instruction manual, people hear the word instruction manual, subconsciously they go, oh, it's already worked out for me. And when people think project, they think, oh yeah, something I'll work on. Project versus goal is like, oh, big deal. Project's like, yeah, I'll work on that. It's about minimizing the energetic charge within the nervous system, so people don't think of it as a massive effort. It's like, oh yeah, I just do that. Why do you do that? Because it's who I am. So we embody our identity with an instruction manual on our project, not trying to go outside of ourselves. And the way it's set in particular, the final part that's important with this is when we have a GPS, and we set, I want to go to Darwin. Okay, we know where we want to go. So easy, that's your goal, what people would call it, quote unquote, call a goal. Let's call it our project. And then I go, sweet. Okay, give me the action steps, or as we would call it, the instruction manual. If you don't know where you are, you can't get there, because if you're in Brisbane and the other person's in Melbourne, you've got two completely different paths. And this is the first part, is we cannot get to where we want to go without knowing where we already are, because our limitations and our blind spots are the things we need to overcome to get there. If we have these conscious desires of, having this career, this finance, this feeling, this partner, this relationship, these children, so on and so forth, we'd already have them. The reason we don't have them is because there's blind spots and limitations that are holding us back, parts of our identity that we're not aware of that are holding us back. So the first step in our identity process is going, what is it that we desire and why aren't we there? So getting underneath and pulling the roots out and going, this is what's holding you back. So we need to get clear on the limitations and go, okay, in a way, what's an opposite to that? Or what are the things that would actually get you there rather than hold you back? So that's where as I mentioned to you, that what's actually going to happen with the identity system that we're kind of talking about now is I will be coaching it to people that will go through it. And I can guarantee that the people that go through it will have such transformed lives that they're going to go, how do I share this? How do I give this to others? So what we're going to do is those that are pulled to facilitate will go through the facilitation process and they can coach it. But the one part that is like, I've already developed this system with, a number of clients privately, but the one part that needs to be nailed is the subconscious in the beginning, because the troubleshooting and everything else that's set out, if they're halfway through the process and they fall off the bandwagon, we know why, we know how, we know what to do to overcome it, because it's structured and systemized. The one part that requires that art in the subconscious is the coaching to begin with, because it's about us going, how do I really know that's your deep down limitation, Jimmy? And that's where it comes into a coach being able to really feel if it's a truth or if it's a little bit of that superficial, yeah, I'm not ready to go there. And that's the one part that if people are ready to go, I really want this life and I know I can create it if I have the right people, the right system. If they can do that, dude, I'm excited for what the world is going to experience. Because one, to do it is to lean into what our topic was, part of today is vulnerability. And they go into that vulnerability, they literally shatter the paradigm of their life that they've been in, because they've gone, yeah, that's what was holding me back. And we know if they get to their goal, that they legitimately face the deepest roots, because if they hadn't, they wouldn't get there. And that's how we know that they've got there. So this is a part of the troubleshooting system, is like, okay, if you're not there and we've been working on this for, 6 weeks and we're off the mark and you've been ticking all the boxes, there's something down at the base that you didn't give. you didn't fully express yourself into.
Mm.
And that's what I mean. Like, it's unfuck-upable. It's just incredible. It's like a self-correcting. I don't even know the word. I'm going to have to work that word out. It's a self-coached process, because it gives you the answers plain and simple, black and white. And I've never seen anything like it, never experienced anything like it. And that's why I speak about it with so much passion. So,
and
yeah.
And we've got to close it off soon. But one thing I think that if we talk very high level and probably related to the audience around mental health is, let's say you have a goal of being, I don't know, a public speaker. And what's holding you back is that you tell yourself, I'm just anxious. I'm the anxious person. I've just always been anxious. I'm not going to be able to do it because I've just always had panic attacks on stage, or I've just always had depression. It's just who I am. And we related to all that stuff you've been talking about at the roots. There's something in there going, you're just the guy with depression. You're the girl with depression, or you're just always going to be that person. And people might say, oh, but John, why can't you just have a crack at this? And he goes, oh, well, I've just always been anxious. I can't. It's just too much for me. Or, can't go move interstate and try something new because I've just always been that person, And for people out there who experience those mental health challenges, whatever they might be, I'm perceiving it as, understand what story you're telling yourself and what story you're living at the moment because of what identity you think you have. And I've lived it. That's why I can understand it, is that I've just always been the failed AFL player. And I've always just been I've always been a disappointment internally. So why try anything else new? Why see how far I can go in HR? See how far I can go in the podcast world? See how far I can go in the personal development world? Because I've always just told myself I'm that guy. That didn't work out last time. And we can talk way more about that in another episode, whatever we need to. But
I'll give one example on that for you, Jimmy, to drive that home, because you are to a T bang on. If you change the story about who you are, you change your life. So Dan McCoy, who you've seen, one of my clients, I mentioned him in the podcast with Trav, but for this specific example, because if we can talk about this, it permeates in every aspect of life. So Dan was diagnosed a paraplegic, T11, T12 paraplegic 5 years ago from a professional motocross accident. And he'd seen all different types of specialists, been to all these different types of care and processes to overcome it that most people go down. And when he came to me, he said, I want to work together. And I said, look, I know you want to work on XYZ. He wanted to work on his upper body to make him just more able. He was like, I didn't really think about the lower body. He hadn't considered it because he tried so much and nothing had worked. I said, we're going to get you to walk again. And he would, at first, he's like, big words. And I just said, honestly, the thing is, we're doing nothing physical to begin with. And he was kind of like, he was a skeptical mind, but his subconscious mind, his whole career, he was a professional athlete for 15 years. And he rode for every factory team in the country and in Australia, raced overseas and whatnot with it all. He never won a professional championship in all of his years racing. Okay. And what he discovered in about our third week of coaching was that his mindset was like a silver. We call it silver. It's like a alter ego. Silver, because he always believed he was a second place guy. He finished second and third in so many championships, was so close to winning so many, never once did in 15 years. He knows now exactly why. But why this is important is because I said to him, we aren't doing anything physical. We need to rewire your subconscious to a point where you believe you can do it and you will be able to. We've literally just been rewiring his subconscious through discussion and him starting to understand his old identity and creating this new identity. We've done some breath work, a little bit of meditation. And after having no progress for the last 2.5 to 3 years at all, they were literally going to cut his right leg off, like he'd spoken about it, because it was just dead weight. He's got his left quads have turned on more. His left hamstring is now firing. His right adductors have turned on. His right hamstring has turned on. His left calf is now firing. He's got his right hip flexor. His right TFL are working. He's gone from basically just being wheelchair bound. He rode a stationary push bike about a month ago, which went viral. And now we've been out push bike riding together in the last few weeks a couple of times. He's riding a freaking push bike and he's walking on crutches now. And we have done nothing physical. His training now is, I'm like, get on the push bike every single day and work those muscles as hard as you can, because the more of a nervous system signal you get, the more it will come through. This is what I mean about the identity. I said to Dan, I could give you, and I said this at the beginning, you're not going to believe me. And I said, don't trust anything I say, only trust what you experience. I said, you will not get anywhere until your subconscious is rewired to say, I am this person. And we haven't done any physio, anything around force, anything to do with that. It's literally rewiring that. And he's riding a freaking push bike now. And he's at the point where I won't be surprised if in the next couple of months, he's walking with those crutches, without those crutches. All of the muscles are just firing up more and more every single day. I got him to wiggle his toes the other day at will. And all we did was get him to focus at the level of the energetic, not at the cell. And this is without doing physical. And this is what I mean when I say this stuff, if this can work for someone that's been diagnosed a paraplegic without any benefit in, the last 3 or 4 years, paralyzed 5 years ago, and he's done this in 2 to 3 months, just through rewiring the subconscious, mental health in that side of it, depression, anxiety. If we can do that with a paraplegic, a spinal cord severage, what can we do with the brain? Like, what can we do with the mind and people in performance and people wanting to, improve their quality of life? So I wanted to share that for people to know that, look, if you hear that and you go, holy crap, that's pretty incredible. You can look him up, DMC_65, Dan McCoy on Instagram. You'll see the videos and you'll see it for yourself. And if someone can do that from that place, then man, when we're talking about the mental side of things, then we've got so much power to give.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, if anyone hears that and goes, wow, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Just
amazing,
doing everything I
story.
can to help the world. So yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Last question I want to ask you, because I know you've got a ton of them. Any books, docos, podcasts, anything that you suggest for people to get their journey for better mental health, better wellness, better personal development? Where can they start, you think?
Okay, so considering we're Thinkmental today, I'm going to tailor our books for the moment to the mental. And I'm fortunate that we're on this. So I've got my library here up top of me. One of these that I'd recommend specifically in this podcast is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. It is incredible for anyone that's felt stuck, and what it drives home is remarkable. It'll come up, and I know it'll probably come up in every podcast interview for the rest of my life. The book Letting Go, yellow and white front cover by Dr. David Hawkins, is the most profound, powerful book I've ever put in my hands. And anyone I've given it to has said the same thing. And then if I gave a third for right now, I'm going to give a third and a fourth. Okay. So A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And I say that he's also got an incredible book, The Power of Now, but I feel as though A New Earth hits the marks of The Power of Now plus more. So it's kind of like bang for your buck. And then How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist, is an incredible book for people beginning their journey. If people are on the journey, if they're struggling with mental health, anxiety, depression, fear, anything like that, where they want to begin the journey, but they're not sure how, they're not sure where to start, who to go to, How to Do the Work by Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist, is incredible. I've had a few friends that have started on this journey that are struggling with anxiety and things like that. And they've gone, oh my gosh, I get it now. I see it. Like this is, it goes in this depth of level. And she also has an amazing Instagram profile, the holistic psychologist. She's posting value every single day. She is amazing. She is honestly probably going to have one of the biggest impacts in our generation, I feel, in terms of people getting through mental health challenges.
Yeah.
I'd say that would be the for the mental health side of it. And if I gave one other as a bonus for relationships, for anyone that's listening that may be struggling with their identity and relationship, The Way of the Superior Man by David Dieter is incredible for men. And Dear Lover, also by David Dieter, Deida, are amazing for understanding how men and women function in different ways. Because I know that mental health is, you can feel if your relationship's going well and incredibly, and you're full of love, the world can be crashing down around you and you feel like you're looking at roses. But if your relationship's going rough and you think it's about to end or it's not going well, the world can be incredible and you think it's all ending. So those two books will be so helpful for that, 100%.
Amazing. Not surprised that you had 6 books to suggest, so thank you for that.
I've read a lot. I'm on the 40 books last year, and I've got the goal of 48 this year. I know I mentioned that before, but I'm big into books because someone that's studied a particular topic for 15 years, you can read their book in 2 days and you get the gist of it. So I'm massive on books. Yeah.
So lastly, where can everyone find you and your work and everything else?
Todd _Jarratt on Instagram is my profile. Like I said, if anything you've heard from here, especially with the identity system, permeates or hits home or hits a mark, just send me a message directly saying, hey, I'm keen to be on the wait list, and just send through your name, your number, and your email, because I'm just putting that there to reach out to people in the future. Because the system will launch in the next month or 2, I would say. If you just want to reach out and chat, or you've got any questions, same thing on there. On Facebook, Coach Jarratt is the page, the business page, but I'm more active on Instagram. I'm on there pretty much every day posting up, stories or value. So yeah. And I will always help however I can. If you send me a message, I'll do all I can to get back to you. And I'm very much an audio message person. If you send me a text and I'm like, hey, I want to give value, I'm just going to audio you back. So just be prepped for those.
Yeah, I've started doing that now since you literally as soon as you send me one, that's all I do now because I'm too lazy to type my thumbs.
So good, so efficient for time, and people can hear what you're really getting at. So
yeah, exactly right. Well, thanks, mate. We had a really great chat, and I knew it was going to be one. And I can't wait to put it up. It's going to be out Wednesday for everyone that's listening. And yeah, we're going to have some really good content. And yeah, as Toddy said, if you ever need to reach out, and I've had this happen a couple of times, and it feels great. This is a community. It's not something you have to avoid. If you need to message any one of us, please do. We've either been through it or heard about how someone's been through it. And if we can't help you, we'll pass you on to someone else that knows. Just be vulnerable for one day at a time and see where it gets you in the long run. But Toddy, thanks, mate. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you for having me on. Thank you for giving me the space and the opportunity to share, and thank you to your listeners that I know are going to reach out and chat, and I'm excited to speak with you all.
Beauty. Thanks, mate. Talk soon.
Thank you, brother.